Today, as Will has said a couple of times, we're thinking about gentleness as the fruit of the Spirit. So we just read that passage from the book of Galatians. But gentleness is not really a quality that's particularly widely admired in our society today. You don't win many plaudits for being gentle in the world at large. We teach our children to speak their minds, to be aware of their rights, and to stand up for themselves. We admire people who don't take it lying down or who don't suffer fools. We like people and we want people to lead us, people who are feisty, people who are go-getters. They're the sort of people that we want to follow or that we want to listen to. Gentle people don't get far in life, we think. They're too busy worrying about other people and worrying about other people's problems or other people's feelings. That's what gentle people do. And because they're too busy worrying about other people, they don't get very far in life. Gentle people don't fit what we think of as successful people. But interestingly, that's not how the Bible sees it. We've just seen that Paul, one of the foremost teachers of Christianity, says that gentleness is one of the chief things that followers of Jesus should aspire to. And as Will read earlier from Matthew 28, we hear Jesus saying himself that he, Jesus Christ, is gentle and humble in heart. But if you think about, gentleness does not equal success, think about Jesus. He's probably one of the most successful people the world has ever seen. He's the most famous person in the world, the most written about person in the world, and the most admired person in history ever. Yet, the reason why Jesus was all those things was precisely because he was gentle and humble in heart. Jesus was gentle in that he was compassionate to those who were suffering. He was willing to sacrifice his own needs and put others first. He was merciful to those who had done wrong. He forgave them instead of giving out justice to them. And he used his words kindly to try and build others up. And that's why gentleness is one of the fruits of the Spirit that Paul, Jesus' follower, lists here, because it is an aspect of Jesus. It's part of Jesus that we should aim for as Christians. This list of the fruit of the Spirit, it's two things. It's something that we will kind of naturally become as we grow in our Christianity, as we spend more time listening to Jesus, as we spend more time trying to live how he lives, we will become like this list. But it's also something that we should aspire for, that we should strive for and aim for, contrary to what our employer or our friends or our family might think that we should be like. And notice Paul says that it's fruit. Fruit is something that is sweet, isn't it? If you have a fruit and it's not sweet, you go, blech, don't like that, because it's not ready yet, it's not ripe. Whereas fruit is something that is sweet. The fruit of the Spirit is sweet for the world around us. When we grow more of the fruit, it's sweet for our brothers and sisters inside church. It's sweet for our family, for our friends, for our neighbours, for our colleagues. That's why it is fruit. And as we think about what it means to be gentle today, we're going to be looking at one particular story in the life of Jesus. I'll tell you where we're going in a minute. Now, just a quick disclaimer, there are many, 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 many stories that I could have chosen to show you Jesus being gentle. I guess pretty much all of them. We've got the whole of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to talk about Jesus being gentle. I've chosen one because I feel like it shows the four aspects of gentleness: compassion, sacrifice, mercy, and kind words. That's where we're going today. I've also chosen this one because it's not too long. But if you can think of a better example please come and tell me afterwards. I would love to hear it. If you think, actually, Stuart, this is a better story that better says what you want to say or what gentleness is, then please come and tell me. I'm very happy to hear it. So let's turn to Luke chapter 5, verses 12 to 14. I'll just find the page number. So that will be, if you're using a purple Bible, that's page 1032. Page 1032, Luke chapter 5, verses 12 to 14. And it says this: While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Then Jesus ordered him, "Don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them." So the first thing that we see in this story, how Jesus shows gentleness, is in his compassion. That should be able to come up there. Great, thank you. This man, the man that comes to Jesus, as we see in the story, this man is a leper. That means he had an incurable skin disease, a skin disease which would make his life a living hell. He was cast out from society and he had to walk around, sometimes with a bell, sometimes just shouting at people, "Stay away, keep away from me, I am unclean." He wasn't even allowed to come near to people, let alone talk to people. Yet, as he approaches Jesus, we don't see any hesitation in Jesus himself. As he comes towards Jesus, even in a different version of the story in the Gospel of Mark, Mark says that Jesus is filled with compassion. When Jesus sees the suffering of this man, Jesus has compassion on him. He looks at him and he loves him. Christ's gentleness means that he has compassion on those who are sick, those who are suffering, and those who are in need. Christ doesn't ignore or belittle people's difficulties or trials, but he sees them for what they are. He doesn't let people's trials and difficulties form a barrier between him and them. Jesus doesn't separate himself, say, "No, you're too complicated, you're too difficult for me, I can't help you." Jesus always had time to those who were in need, who came to him. Gentleness is seeing the trials of others and being willing to try and understand their pain, to find out what it is that's going on with them. But also, most of all, in Jesus, we see his compassion in that he was willing to die on the cross for us sinners. We who had gone away from God, we turned our back on him, and we too had ended up unclean and separated from God. But Christ was willing to come because he looked at us and he loved us. And Christ's compassion moved him to give his life for us. And I want to say today, if you've never heard this before, Christ has compassion on you. Christ loves you. He sees your situation and he comes alongside you to understand you, and he wants to help you. So firstly, we see compassion as part of gentleness. The second thing we see, and these are very much overlapping things. They're not really separate. The second thing we see is sacrifice. Jesus is willing to bear the cost that compassion requires. You know, what Jesus does here is radical. We've probably heard the story of Jesus touching a leper before, but we kind of don't really grasp how phenomenal and how radical this was. Because even actually in this day and age, maybe we understand it more in 2022 than we did in 2019, because, you know, we've had 2 years of being very aware of the dangers of physical contact with infected people, or even being in the same room as somebody who was an infected person. Leprosy was even more contagious than COVID. If you touched somebody who had leprosy, there was pretty much no chance that you could get rid of it. It would surely infect you. It would leave you with a skin disease which would show to everybody in the world that could see you. But it would also mean that you became unclean. I mentioned that word before. Leprosy makes somebody unclean, and that means that they are unable to go and worship God with everybody else. In a way, leprosy kind of made people like the worst kind of sinners because they were not good enough to come to God. Yet what does Jesus do? Jesus reaches out and he puts his hand on this man with an infectious skin disease. Jesus risks becoming sick. He risks becoming a religious outcast, a social outcast himself by doing this. He's willing to sacrifice his own social standing, his own health, in order to help this person in need. Jesus' gentleness means he's willing to give up his own rights in order to help somebody who is in need. And of course, we see Jesus' gentle sacrifice best when he laid down his life and he died on the cross. Christ literally sacrificed his life, his blood and his breath for us so that we might be saved. Yet through this all, he did this willingly. It wasn't a reluctant sacrifice. It wasn't like, ugh, if I really do have to, okay, then I will. Jesus was, even as the nails were being hammered into his hands, he prayed, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. And Jesus gave his life for you. Jesus' gentleness led him to sacrifice his life for your sake, for your sins. Thirdly, we see gentleness. We see Jesus' gentleness shown in mercy. Jesus shows mercy to this leper. As I was researching and preparing for this, I was looking up in lots of different Bible dictionaries and things what the definition of gentleness was, and kind of trying to take from different things. And one of the translation, so the word that we translate in English as gentle, in its original meaning in the Old Testament, kind of revolves around this idea of mercy. And you kind of have this picture of a judge who does not... hang on, let me read what I've written down here, because that would be best. A judge whose refusal to exact what the law demands towards people who would otherwise be crushed by it. So a judge sees that somebody has done something wrong, but also says, I can see that if I were to bring the full force of the law on you, that would crush you and that would be bad for you. Therefore, I'm going to show mercy to you. If they were all following the law, Jesus and his friends should only have seen the leper in the distance. The leper should not have approached them because of all the strict rules around cleanness and uncleanness. They could have no contact. Jesus and his disciples would have been well within their rights, either to run away from this poor man or to use force to keep him away. That would have been perfectly, nobody in society would have said, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They would have said, that's the right thing to do. You shouldn't have any contact with that man at all. You should push him away. You should run away. Yet when he came to Christ, when the leper came towards Christ, Christ did not run away. Christ did not stand on his rights and say, no, it is my right to do this. Christ was merciful to him. Jesus didn't shout, get away from me, you're not allowed to be close to me. Christ did not use the law or even kind of socially accepted behavior in his favor, but he chose to be merciful to this poor man by allowing the leper not only to approach him, but Jesus reaching out and touch him. Jesus shows mercy in his gentleness. His desire to do what is best for somebody in need, not simply what is right in that situation. And of course, we see God's mercy to us in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, don't we? By rights, we as sinners, we should be punished for our sin and rebellion against God. We deserve punishment for our treason. We deserve nothing but God's anger towards us. The just thing, the right thing for God to do is to punish us for our sin. Yet God is consistently merciful, consistently kind to us. He does not give us what we deserve, but he constantly gives us opportunities to turn back to him. God does not treat you, friends, God does not treat you fairly. When you mess up, when you drink too much, when you say something you shouldn't, when you look at things that you said you weren't going to look at, whatever messing up looks like for you, God doesn't treat you fairly. Because when you come back to him, he's not like the judge or the distant father who gives you exactly what you deserve. That is not what God does. No, when we mess up, God, like the father in the story of the prodigal son, God comes to us and embraces us and says, welcome home when we come back. No matter what we actually deserve, God gives us love and kindness and compassion. As soon as we turn back to him, he pours out his mercy on us. I read, there's a great book, which if you'd like to think more about God's gentleness in Christ, it's called Humble and Lowly. Gentle and Lowly, thank you, Will, by Dane Ortland. And a great illustration that, I think this is the right illustration. I couldn't find the book to get this from it, but it stuck in my head. That's how much it was. He talks about how we often feel like God is really hard and doesn't want to show us mercy. But actually, he uses this picture. He says God's mercy is like an overfilled water balloon. And it's just there, and it's full, and it's just waiting for one tiny little prick, and it will gush out all over us. All you need to gain access to God's mercy is a mustard seed size of faith to say, God, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And God's mercy will gush out towards you. Gentleness is mercy. Finally, gentleness is kind words. So we see it here, and we also see it in other places. Like I say, this is one story. It's not necessarily the best story in the entire gospel to show this particular thing. But we see Jesus using gentle and kind words towards this man. Even though his words are few, they are designed to build up the man, not to tear him down. We see in Proverbs 15, chapter 1, that a gentle word will turn away anger. Jesus does not tell this man off for following the rules. He doesn't speak down to him in a demeaning way, but he responds simply and kindly to the man. Some other examples you might look at for Jesus speaking kindly to people, these are just a few that came into my head, would be how Jesus speaks with the Samaritan woman in John chapter 2, or the woman with a bleeding problem in Luke chapter 8. Jesus always spoke kindly to those who were in need. Actually, really, kind words are just a practical outworking of his compassion and his mercy to people. Because he loved people, he was determined to do what was good for them, not just what was right, and so he spoke kindly and gently to them. Speech is such a key part of gentleness that Martin Luther, who was a 16th century monk and theologian, thinker about the Bible, his key description about gentleness when he comments on the passage in Galatians is, he says this, I've modified the language slightly to make it a bit more understandable for us. Gentleness is not sharp but bitter. Sorry, not sharp and bitter, there we go, but gentle and mild. That makes more sense, doesn't it? Not sharp and bitter, but gentle and mild. Courteous and fair-spoken, as such to make others delight in their company. as such to make others delight in their company. People certainly delighted in the company of Jesus, didn't they? They loved to be around Jesus. Even during his unfair trial and execution process, Jesus' enemies could not make him any less gentle in his defense of himself. The Roman governor even said, "I find no basis of a charge against this man." So gentle was Jesus' speech. So, gentleness has 4 key elements: compassion, mercy, sacrifice, kind words. We're going to move slightly now to look at what it might mean for us to be gentle in different contexts. But before we get to that, I want to say how is it, other than thinking about it and aiming for it, how is it that we can grow in gentleness? Well, the fruit of the Spirit are fruit of the Spirit. So first and foremost, actually, they come from the Spirit. They are gifts from God that God gives to us. So the key ways that we can grow in gentleness is we spend time meditating on Christ, and we spend time asking God to make us more gentle by his Spirit. So we read about Christ, about his gentleness, and we ask God to work in us to increase our mercy, our compassion, our sacrifice, and our kind words. But what might it look like in our lives? One of the reasons why we decided to preach about the fruit of the Spirit over the summer is because we realized that over the pandemic, many of our relationships, and I think it's fair to say that this is still the case, even though we're kind of quite a long way, the pandemic feels like a long time ago. Many of our relationships and our interactions have become fractured. Having spent such a long time away from each other, apart from one another, our relationships deteriorated. Sadly, as I'm sure we've all got experience, some of our relationships have deteriorated beyond repair. And we can see this at work inside the church, as well as in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, even in our workplaces. And we thought that it would be good for us to take a step back and think about how we as Christians are called to live. So what does it look like for us then to be gentle? Well, what does it look like, firstly, for us to be compassionate? Well, as compassionate people, like Jesus, we take time for others. We recognize that as human beings, we all have feelings. We have ups and downs of life. Being gentle is about being willing to take the time to understand where somebody else is coming from. And that means that to be compassionate, we have to take an interest in the lives of others. We might genuinely want to find out about them, to find out what makes them tick. And when people share their problems with them, the gentle response, the Christ-like response, is not to say, "Oh, I'm sure that will be fine, don't worry about it." But actually, it's to try and understand, to sit with other people and to hear their problems and to love them through it. Like Christ, we shouldn't seek to avoid difficult or complicated people, but we should seek to love them and give them time. Gentle people take time to care for others. What might it look like for us to be sacrificial as we are gentle? Gentle people are willing to give themselves up for the sake of others. Gentle people do not count their own needs as the most important thing, but are willing to give out for others, even when they lose out, even when I myself might lose out. Like Christ, they are willing to lay down their own advantages for the sake of others. It might be they give up their free time to help another, or it might be their finances to provide for somebody else, or it might be giving up your social standing and being willing to be seen talking to or be friends with somebody who might make other people look at you and think, "Oh, why are they talking to them?" Or "I didn't know they were like that." Gentleness is being willing to absorb the cost that it takes to love others for their benefit. And which brings us on to mercy. A gentle person will constantly overlook the sins and faults of others. Frequently in the New Testament, being gentle is combined with the instruction to forgive others. Like Christ, who even as he was being crucified said, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." As his followers, we cannot be like Christ if we do not show mercy to others. And this is painful. Showing mercy to others involves sacrificing ourselves. I've said these things overlap. Forgiveness and mercy involves admitting where we have been hurt, but making a choice not to hold on to that hurt, to let it go, to hold it with open hands before God. Forgiveness is a conscious letting go and seeking to love a person who has hurt you. And this can only truly be done with the help of the Spirit of Christ. A gentle person who is a merciful person actually is a patient person. As we said, these aspects of gentleness overlap and the fruit of the Spirit overlap. You can't be a gentle person if you're not a patient person. And as we said back at the beginning, gentleness is not a quality that's admired by the rest of the world. A gentle person is not a go-getter. A gentle person is probably not ambitious for success and riches, but that doesn't mean that a gentle person doesn't work hard. A gentle person does not seek justice for the wrongs done to them, but is willing to absorb hurt for the sake of someone else. Your friends and colleagues may well look at you as weak and feeble if you are gentle. Now, disclaimer. Being gentle does not mean that we never seek justice. They're not the same thing. Look at Christ. He was gentle with those who were weak and those who were in need, but his gentleness did not stop him from speaking out against the religious leaders in a clear way. Likewise, whilst being gentle means we may absorb hurt from some people, it is possible to be gentle and to stand on justice. What I'm saying is that if you are being repeatedly abused, unfairly discriminated against, or harmed, you should seek justice. I want to encourage you that if you are being abused or harmed in any way, then you should seek help in the appropriate way. Gentle mercy involves showing mercy and forgiving others who are poor, vulnerable, weak, hurting, who sin against you because of those things. Gentle mercy involves compassion and seeking to understand why somebody has acted in a certain way. It involves trying to see things from their perspective. That's why kind of mercy and compassion go together. It means seeking to think well of others, resisting the temptation to pay back evil for evil. Being gentle is to be like Christ, to turn the other cheek. And finally, speaking kindly. In the letter that James wrote to the church, he devotes basically 2 whole chapters on how we should speak kindly to one another, really. In James chapters 3 and 4, you can find that. He says that we should use our words to build up and not tear down others. Have you noticed that you never meet a gentle person who does not speak kindly? It's often the biggest giveaway. The way that we speak to people and about people is often the biggest giveaway of our gentleness. Paul tells us in Ephesians 4, verse 4, that we should not use obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking. Our gentleness is shown in our speech. How often do you swear? What sort of jokes do you tell? There's nothing wrong with telling a joke, but is it a joke that some people might be offended by? Do you make fun of people? Now, I must admit, I'm a fan of a bit of sarcasm and a bit of banter, but over time, I have become personally more aware that frequently I can use these things to put other people down and make me look better. And I've had to work on that myself. On the surface, we may laugh, but we all know that it can hurt on the inside when we laugh on the outside. Gentle and kind words don't make people hurt. Again, in Ephesians 4, just after what he says about obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, Paul says that we should speak thanksgiving instead of those things. We should be using our voices, our words, to praise God and to build other up. And James says that our words should be pure, considerate, full of mercy, and sincere. As followers of Jesus, we're not free to say whatever we want about whoever we want, whenever we want. We are called to submit to Christ and to live our lives for him. And that means that we need to work hard with the help of the Spirit on what we say and how we say it so that other people are built up. Our gentleness is often first seen in our speech. So Christ-like gentleness, therefore, is when we are compassionate to others. It's being willing to sacrifice our own needs and wants for their benefit. It's showing mercy to cover over their sins and faults, and it's speaking kindly to him. These qualities probably won't get you a promotion in work. They will probably not make you rich, and they certainly won't make you comfortable in life. But they will make you more like Christ. And they will make your life more of a sweet blessing, because it's fruit, remember, to one another, both in the church family and outside the church family. Let's pray. Sweet Jesus, gentle, meek, and mild, we thank you and praise you that you are gentle to us. Thank you that you are compassionate, that you understand us. You pour out your mercy upon us, though we do not deserve it, Lord. You show us mercy. Thank you that, Father, thank you that you sent Jesus to sacrifice his life for us on the cross. Thank you that Jesus speaks words. Your word is gentle and builds us up. Lord, help us to be more like Jesus. Lord, help us to love and know the gentleness of Christ towards us more in our own failings and our own needs. And help us to look more to you and to live gentle lives, to live lives that are sweet to one another, so that your name might be more glorified in us and through us. Amen.